I'd like to introduce you to the future of heavy metal, Pat Boone.
For decades, the world saw Pat Boone as the smiling man with the perfect voice, the perfect family, and the perfect life. But behind the applause and television lights, there was one relationship that quietly shaped everything he became. Now, at 91 years old, Pat Boone speaks with a kind of honesty that only comes after a lifetime of love, loss, and reflection. Because sometimes, the greatest story is not about fame at all. It is about the one person who stays beside someone before the success, during the pressure, and long after the spotlight begins to fade. The public knew the entertainer. But very few understood the emotional bond that carried him through decades of change, heartbreak, and loneliness. And now, as Pat looks back on the life he built, one sentence seems to hold more weight than every song, every award, and every television appearance combined. She was the love of my life. But what truly happened behind those words? And why does that love still seem to shape him so deeply today? Long before the fame arrived, Pat Boone was simply a young man trying to build a stable future in an uncertain world. He grew up during difficult economic years, in a time when families valued security more than attention. That early environment shaped his personality in quiet but powerful ways. While many future entertainers chased excitement and rebellion, Pat seemed drawn toward structure, discipline, and emotional safety. Even as a teenager, he carried himself differently. Teachers and friends often noticed how careful he was with his image and behavior. He wanted approval, but deeper than that, he wanted belonging. Psychologically, that need for stability became one of the strongest forces in his life. It shaped the way he approached fame, family, and relationships later on. Then he met Shirley Boone. Their relationship started before television audiences knew his name. That timing mattered more than people realized. Shirley met the uncertain young man before the polished celebrity image existed. She saw the nervousness, the ambition, and the emotional pressure hiding beneath his calm personality. As Pat's music career slowly began opening doors, Shirley became the person who reminded him who he truly was outside the spotlight. But success changes relationships in unpredictable ways. Fame often magnifies insecurities people never knew they had. And as Pat's career suddenly accelerated faster than anyone expected, a difficult question quietly began forming in the background. Could young love survive the emotional pressure of becoming America's perfect couple? By the late 1950s, Pat Boone had become one of the most recognizable entertainers in America. His clean-cut appearance and calm personality made him feel safe to audiences during a rapidly changing cultural era. Parents trusted him. Television producers admired him. Record sales climbed higher every year. Standing beside him through all of it was Shirley Boone. To the public, they seemed almost untouchable. Young, faithful, smiling, and deeply committed to family life, they represented an image many Americans wanted to believe still existed. But public admiration can slowly become emotional pressure. Once the world begins calling a family perfect, every mistake starts feeling dangerous. Behind the scenes, Pat's career demanded constant movement. Tours, interviews, rehearsals, and television appearances pulled him away from home for long periods of time. Fame created excitement, but it also created emotional exhaustion. Psychologically, public figures often begin splitting into two versions of themselves: the public identity audiences expect, and the private person carrying hidden stress. Shirley became the emotional center holding everything together while cameras focused on her husband. Friends often described her as calm, grounded, and deeply loyal. Their marriage appeared genuine rather than performative, which made audiences trust them even more. But no relationship escapes pressure forever. Over time, even strong marriages begin carrying invisible emotional weight. Expectations grow heavier. Fatigue builds quietly. And the fear of disappointing millions of strangers can slowly affect the way people see themselves. The public still saw polished smiles and happy interviews. What they could not see was the emotional strain beginning to grow underneath the surface. For years, Pat Boone built his career around qualities audiences admired: respect, discipline, kindness, and morality. But over time, living inside that image became emotionally complicated. The entertainment industry was changing rapidly during the 1960s and 1970s. Music became louder, more rebellious, and more controversial. Suddenly, Pat's clean public image no longer seemed fashionable to younger audiences. That shift affected him more deeply than many people realized. Psychologically, individuals who build their identity around approval often struggle when public opinion changes unexpectedly. Pat had spent decades trying to avoid scandal and maintain stability. Yet the world around him no longer seemed interested in stability. While other celebrities reinvented themselves through controversy or rebellion, Pat often appeared emotionally caught between preserving his values and remaining culturally relevant. Public criticism became difficult to process because it challenged not only his career, but also his sense of self. For someone who spent years trying to be good, rejection could feel deeply personal. Throughout those difficult years, Shirley Boone remained beside him. She became more than emotional support. She became a reminder of who he was before fame complicated his identity. Their relationship slowly transformed from youthful romance into emotional partnership. But long marriages survive through endurance, not perfection. Decades of public pressure, career uncertainty, and emotional fatigue were beginning to leave scars both of them quietly carried. Then life introduced challenges far more serious than changing music trends. Challenges that fame, money, and public admiration could no longer protect them from. To millions of people, the Boone family still appeared stable and admired. But like many families living under constant public attention, some of their deepest struggles unfolded quietly behind closed doors. Fame can create the illusion that successful families are emotionally protected from ordinary pain. In reality, public pressure often makes personal struggles harder to discuss honestly. As the years passed, Pat Boone and Shirley Boone faced the same emotional challenges many parents experience: generational differences, family tension, and the difficulty of keeping emotional connection alive during stressful periods. Their daughter, Debbie Boone, found success in music herself, bringing both pride and additional pressure into the family dynamic. At the same time, American culture was changing quickly. Traditional values that once made the Boone family widely admired now felt increasingly distant from younger generations. For Pat, these years became emotionally complicated. He had spent decades representing stability and morality in public, yet real family life rarely follows simple rules. Parenting adult children, handling disappointment, and protecting relationships required emotional vulnerability he rarely showed publicly. Friends often described Shirley as the emotional bridge inside the family. While Pat remained the public face, she quietly helped preserve emotional closeness behind the scenes. Her calm personality became essential during difficult moments. But over time, the emotional weight grew heavier. Aging, career pressure, personal fears, and exhaustion slowly collided all at once. And then, after decades of surviving life together, they faced the one challenge neither of them could emotionally prepare for. When serious illness entered Shirley Boone's life, the emotional atmosphere surrounding Pat Boone changed completely. The confident entertainer audiences recognized for decades suddenly faced something fame could not solve. Watching a lifelong partner suffer creates a unique kind of heartbreak. It happens slowly. Quietly. Day by day. For Pat, caring for Shirley gradually became more important than career recognition or public appearances. The priorities that once shaped his identity began fading into the background. Psychologically, long-term relationships create emotional interdependence. After decades together, couples often develop routines and habits so deep that one person's pain becomes emotionally shared by the other. Pat appeared deeply affected by Shirley's declining health because her presence had become inseparable from his understanding of daily life itself. During later interviews, he spoke less about achievements and more about gratitude, companionship, and time. That shift revealed something deeply human about aging. Success eventually matters less than the people who remain present during life's hardest moments. As Shirley's condition worsened, Pat seemed emotionally transformed by helplessness and devotion at the same time. He could not stop the illness. He could only remain beside her. Then came the moment he feared most. After more than 60 years together, Shirley passed away. The loss shattered the emotional structure of Pat's life. Suddenly, the routines, conversations, and small daily comforts that once filled his world disappeared into silence. And for the first time in decades, the man audiences always saw smiling was forced to confront overwhelming loneliness. Grief rarely arrives in dramatic moments alone. For Pat Boone, it appeared quietly in ordinary routines, empty rooms, familiar songs, and memories attached to places he once shared with Shirley Boone. After her death, many people expected Pat to continue appearing publicly with the same calm personality audiences had known for decades. But loss changes people emotionally in ways that cannot always be hidden. His interviews became softer and more reflective. Instead of speaking mainly as an entertainer, he increasingly sounded like a husband trying to understand life without his closest companion. Psychologists often describe grief as the painful process of rebuilding identity after emotional attachment is broken. For couples married over 60 years, daily life becomes deeply interconnected. Simple habits, morning conversations, shared meals, familiar jokes, become part of a person's emotional stability. When one partner disappears, the surviving partner can feel emotionally disconnected from the world itself. Pat began speaking openly about missing Shirley in small moments rather than dramatic ones. He missed her voice, her presence, the comfort of simply knowing she was nearby. Those details revealed the depth of their relationship more honestly than glamorous public photographs ever could. At the same time, he leaned heavily on faith as a source of endurance and meaning. Rather than becoming bitter, he appeared increasingly reflective about the temporary nature of fame, success, and even life itself. But one emotional truth continued following him through every memory and interview. No achievement from his long career seemed more valuable than the love he lost. And as he entered his 90s, his reflections about Shirley began carrying even deeper emotional weight. At 91 years old, Pat Boone speaks differently than he once did. Age has a way of removing performance from people. Public image matters less. Reputation matters less. What remains is emotional truth. And when Pat reflects on Shirley Boone now, his words feel deeply personal rather than rehearsed. "She was the love of my life" sounds less like a romantic line and more like the final conclusion of a man looking back across an entire lifetime. That sentence carries unusual emotional weight because it comes from someone who spent more than 6 decades building a life beside the same person. Through fame, cultural change, criticism, aging, family struggles, and illness, Shirley remained emotionally connected to him in a way success never could. Psychologically, people often spend their younger years chasing achievement, recognition, and identity. But later in life, many begin measuring meaning differently. Relationships become more important than applause. Emotional connection becomes more valuable than public success. Looking back now, Pat's greatest legacy may not be music, television, or celebrity at all. It may be the quiet consistency of loving one person across an entire lifetime. There is something universally human about that realization. Eventually, awards fade. Careers end. Public attention disappears. What remains are memories, relationships, regrets, and the people who made life feel meaningful when cameras were no longer present. And perhaps that is why Pat Boone's story continues resonating so deeply today. Because underneath the celebrity image is something every person understands. The fear of losing love, and the gratitude of having experienced it at all. As the story closes, one question quietly lingers behind everything Pat Boone has said. When people look back on their own lives someday, what will matter most to them in the end?